Good morning, Mr Allan. The REC Committee inquiry noted concern that enforcement action in relation to breaches of sea lice levels had not been sufficiently robust, and the report recommended that it must be robust, enforceable and include appropriate penalties. So do you believe that the enforcement regime has improved since that report?
I'll answer that in two ways. One, I think the sea lice situation on farm in Scotland has changed significantly since that report. We have new reporting requirements in place, and in my opinion, and in the opinion of lawyers, the enforcement action which is taken is related to the requirement of the law. Many people think that high sea lice numbers, for example, are something which are directly punishable. It's a direct offence. It's not. The requirement of the law is that the farmers have satisfactory measures in place to control, minimise and prevent sea lice infestations. Where those measures are deemed not to be satisfactory, that's the point of law where regulation kicks in. And the law would require me, where it is not satisfactory, to serve an improvement notice on the farmer. Where the farmer does not comply with that improvement notice or enforcement notice, that is the point at which a file could be produced and presented to Procurator Fiscal for consideration for prosecution. So, in my opinion, the law is satisfactory and reasonable to reach the point of compliance which Scottish governments seek to achieve, which is a satisfactory measure of control. We have to accept that subsequent to previous inquiry, the reporting requirements changed. And we have seen with a change in that reporting requirement, sea lice numbers come down on farm. In the last year, we have offered no enforcement notices. In previous years, we offered more enforcement notices.
Rachel Hamilton.
Nice to see you giving evidence this morning, Mr Allan. We heard evidence last week that the sea lice situation was still very serious, and you had said that the sea lice situation has changed significantly. So I think the committee would like to understand, if you have the figures to hand, how many incidences have there been of the sea lice levels exceeding the mandatory number?
If my memory serves me correctly, I do have it, and I will find it before I finish my question. So, but
well,
the previous intervention level of 6 was only exceeded once in the last full reporting year. Sea lice treatment is very much a balance. You have to consider the health of the fish, the population of the sea lice, the state of the environment, and the available tools which farmers have to deal with the sea lice presence. And we have seen a decrease in the availability of veterinary medicines, and farmers have had to apply other measures. So we have, plain, straightforward husbandry practice and management. So following of sites, single year classes. There are a limited number of veterinary medicines which are available, which are consent to discharge is dealt with through CEPA, so there is a limited volume of veterinary medicines that they can use. Biological controls in the way of cleaner fish, and physical processes, so bathing in fresh water, the application of hydrolyzers and thermolyzers. So there's a whole range of measures which farmers are taking routinely to control the lice populations on their fish. It is not simply because they are required to by law. It is a continuing husbandry operation.
But you did say that sea lice situation has changed significantly. So what did you mean by that? If the mandatory situation hasn't actually made a difference?
I think management of sea lice on farm fish populations in Scotland has improved. I'm more carrot than stick. As a regulator, if I have to apply the stick, that actually reflects very bad. I would see myself as a regulator having failed. My primary driver, and the driver of the Scottish Government, is to drive continuous improvement, to drive compliance. And where you come to the stick, you've actually failed to appropriately, in my view, to appropriately regulate. I would far rather drive compliance than seek prosecution. We can't consider sea lice in isolation. They infect a population of fish, and your ability to manage the sea lice on the fish is also affected by their physical state, their clinical health. And where we see, for example, significant gill health issues, these fish are more fragile, and some do not tolerate the treatment as well. So either you have a negative clinical effect on the health of the fish, or indeed, ultimately, some of those fish may perish as a result of sea lice treatment. And there's a continual balance being struck between parasite control on one hand and clinical health on the other.
As a general point, as a very generalisation, the last full mortality figures that I got were 36,000 tonnes of fish died in 2022, which was 25% of the population by estimates of fish that had gone to sea. Do you see that number as a figure against the amount of production there was? The production hadn't really gone up, but fish deaths had gone up. Is that not a fair assumption?
They're not my figures. And what you're referring to there is tonnage.
Yes.
What we have seen in recent years, not necessarily that the rate of mortality has changed. The rate of mortality, as judged by survival to harvest, is remarkably constant. It sits, we can argue about points, but it sits around 75%. So around 75% of fish which move to harvest, that are put to sea, survive to harvest. So the mortality rate is fairly steady. However, what we have seen is a change in the age at which fish die. So, 25% of a small biomass is a relatively small number. But if you grow those fish for an extra year and then they die, the same number of fish have died, but the tonnage increases because they're a year older.
So bigger fish are dying?
Bigger fish are dying.
Well, that gives me confidence.